related to composting. But who here likes worms? Awesome, a lot more than I was expecting. Honestly, 4 years ago, I would have said gross. Worms are gross. If you guys have ever seen Shark Tales, you know that scene where there's worms on the hook and it's like pleading for its life. It's like, oh please, I have a family, I have kids. That made me so sad. Every time my parents would go fishing, I'd be like, we can't use worms. They never took me fishing again. But today I want to talk about composting, which is a pretty environmentally conscious or conservation type of thing. I'm going to compare the difference between regular composting and vermicomposting, and I forgot the remote. But to do this, I'm going to use the word worm, which took a long time to find the words for worm for some reason. I couldn't think of anything. My roommate really wanted me to bring these. I didn't know where to put them. They're worms, if you couldn't tell. But we're going to start with W, worldly or organic matter. And then we have oxygen, rain, and microbes, bringing us back to, high school biology. So with worldly organisms, or worldly like organic matter, both composting and vermicomposting have to have materials to break down. But with regular composting, it's usually just, it's not as picky. You have food waste, you have yard trimmings, you have wood, but it does need to be smaller in order to break it down. But with vermicomposting and the worms, they kind of just need food waste. It's super picky, mainly just food waste, sometimes paper, sometimes coconut, which was weird. I don't even think we have coconut here. But yeah, so Oklahoma University said that a compost pile, just a regular compost pile, needs to be started with 1 part brown material and 1 part green material, which, brown material is just dead leaves and twigs. And then green material is, the live stuff. So fruit rinds, yard trimmings, grass, all the green things that go into composting. But one thing that both animals and plants have in common, oxygen. So this is just a picture to show you guys like how oxygen goes through the soil. Both vermicomposting and regular composting have oxygen. The cool thing about composting though is that with regular composting, Illinois State University says that you kind of need to mix it, you need to turn it in order to get the oxygen to go through. But if you're lazy like me, you don't really want to do that all the time. Vermicomposting, the earthworms actually do it for you. So that's pretty cool, it's pretty nice. Okay, so I'm assuming everyone's seen Twilight just from, Abby's speech. All right, so if you remember a scene in that movie, the field trip, where they go to the greenhouse and he talks about composting. Well, moisture is also a very important thing in composting, both vermi and regular composting. And that scene where he's actually talking about composting, he's like, compost is cool, now stuff that in there. And so he makes the tea, and he's like, don't drink it, it's for the plants. Moisture for both vermi and regular composting is pretty important. The thing with vermicomposting is that they do it on their own. The worms kind of regulate the moisture. But regular composting, if it's too wet, you have to keep mixing it until it's like a good moisture. And then if it's too dry, it decomposes way too slowly. And then you get impatient, you don't want to wait anymore. But bacteria, okay, I had a whole transition, kind of messed that up. So, if you guys like hot tubs, who here likes hot tubs? I'm assuming most people do. So do bacteria. They love being in really moist places and they produce heat. The problem with composting is that the earthworms hate it. They absolutely despise the heat. So there's barely any bacteria in vermicomposting, but with regular composting, you end up, bacteria's bait, that's the main job for bacteria. That's why it wants smaller pieces, because bacteria is the only thing working, it's breaking it down, and it takes a lot longer than vermicomposting. What's also really cool about vermicomposting is you can do it both outside and inside. So it's more convenient for, Montana. As it snows, you kind of don't want to be outside doing composting. Oh, also, in regular composting, the bacteria release heat. And it gets super hot, and they love that moisture and that heat. And vermicomposting, I think I already said this. Never mind, let's move on. All right, so the main points for composting is, let's go back to worldly organic matter. You want manure, you want plants, animals, dead leaves, twigs, and then you also want oxygen. Make sure that oxygen is going through all of the soil, as well as rain or moisture, which makes more sense. You want more moisture in the soil, but it has to be a right amount of moisture. Kind of confusing, kind of sucks because you never know. And then microbes, which are in both vermi and regular composting. And they just contribute to decomposing all of the material and everything in the soil. So in conclusion, I hope you guys learned a little bit about microcomposting, or microcomposting, I don't even know what that came from, vermicomposting and regular composting, as well as just the process that both of them go through. And if you get anything from this speech, one person can help the environment one worm at a time.